Onto your markets news now. Asian markets closed up in positive territory, although the Shanghai Composite Index closed almost flat. This followed a good showing in the United States markets on Friday after Fed Chair Jerome Powell stating clearly, quote, "The time has come for policy to adjust," close quotes. The Nikkei share average rose by 0.66%. The Hang Seng Index ended the session up 1.06%, and the Shanghai Composite Index was up a mere 0.04%. Over in the United States, U.S. markets were on a roll on Friday on a clear statement from Jerome Powell about the downward direction of interest rates. This will have also relieved concerns from some quarters about the possibility of a hard landing in the U.S. economy. The question now is by how much the Fed Reserve will cut rates at its next sitting in September. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended up 1.14%. The S&P 500 rose by 1.15%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq jumped 1.5% at the close. The JSE is firmer today, with global markets taking a breather after last week's rally. The all-share index advancing 0.1%. Taking a look at the currencies, the local unit trading flat at 17.73 to the US dollar, 23.39 against the pound, and 19.82 vis-a-vis the euro. Gold is trading at around $2,523 an ounce. Platinum is trading at $967.85 an ounce, and Brent crude is hovering around the $80 a barrel mark. Zwelakhe Mnguni is the Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Global Fund Managers, and he joins us now. Very good afternoon, Zwelakhe. So markets have obviously been spurred by the Fed Chair's overt statements around the direction of interest rates. I suppose the speculation now is the extent to which that cut is going to be. But in the meantime, can markets maintain this positive momentum?
Yeah, good afternoon, Nampu. Certainly, I do think that we are in a territory where markets are seeing the balancing act between the U.S. economy in particular and the Fed rate decisions. It seems like we would have like a smooth landing, and I think that is positive for markets. So our markets are actually likely to continue on the run on that basis.
So tensions are brewing quite a bit in the Middle East, and historically this should have seen quite a jump in the oil price. And indeed, we have seen an uptick in the oil price, but not that significant. What's your reading of this?
I think people have been numbed by the drama out of the Middle East, and as you say, I mean, the reaction was muted in terms of the oil price. But there's been a range-bound trading in the oil price between 75 and, say, 90. And I think a large part of it has been the supply side discipline. So geopolitics do play a role for the spikes to 90, but it hasn't been a major factor. I think the supply side has been a major factor. I think the situation in the Middle East remains quite tense, but it does look like there is an intention across all sides not to escalate to a full-on war. So I think where we are in the oil price will probably be a range bound that will stay within.
So the two-part retirement system is around the corner. It's kicking in on the 1st of September. From your perspective as a market analyst, a market player, does this have any impact whatsoever on retirement funds that are listed on the JSE?
No, I don't think it's going to be a material impact. I mean, the numbers being thrown around by people who are statistically qualified to is that it's between 50 and 75 billion that would be withdrawn through the 30,000 rand withdrawal limit. So I think on that basis, it's unlikely that we would see a material withdrawal of assets in the market, given that some of these companies, I mean, Coronation is probably 600 billion, Investec or 91 is 1.3, Alex Forbes probably 350. So if you split the amount between the key players, I don't think it's going to be a material withdrawal.
All All right, and of course, two educational houses have put out their company results, their half-year results for the 6 months ended June 2024. Let's start with Advotech. They're in the educational space, and of course, they have schools like the posh school. It slipped my mind. I'm thinking of Kuro, but
the Crawfords. And
that's it, the Crawfords. Pardon me. So of course they look after those schools, and they have secondary and tertiary schools that they look after. They reported revenue up 9%, and their headline earnings per share up 16%. Your thoughts on this particular stock and the sector in general?
Look, I think the sector was under a lot of pressure during COVID, and we saw a rebound in terms of them holding on to the enrollments. We are now in a phase where we are seeing growth in enrollments. I think Advotech overall enrollment growth was 6% for shown in the first half, and it is something that is positive in that if you add inflation on top of that, you should be able to get between 10 and 15%, depending on what inflation is. But I think what we are also seeing is that the operating leverage is kicking in the schools business. I mean, the resourcing business is a difficult one, but the schooling business is that you'd have a same amount of teachers to a large extent when the class is at 40 versus at 35. So as you add more students, you basically do a lot better from a profit point of view. So that is why we are seeing that the profit improved better than the revenues in that regard.
Yeah. And Stadio, another player in the sector, their revenue is up 16% at 826 million rand, and their headline earnings per share also up 20%. Student numbers were up by 9% in August 2024 compared to the previous year. Their student numbers just over 50,000. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, again, the enrollments are a big driver there. So what we are seeing in the student numbers is basically the enrollments basically taking effect in the books, and essentially they grew the enrollment by about 10%. So again, still a good story. There is now a growth phase after a very bad COVID season that affected them for 2-3 years.
Yeah, for those people who have a little bit of money on the side or who may be withdrawing their retirement funds to invest somewhere, are these spaces that you would invest in?
I would invest in this. I think education is a good space, especially in South Africa where supply is limited, or at least good supply is limited. And I think there is an opportunity for these businesses to grow, but obviously one has to pay attention to how the management of these companies are managing the capacity. So if you overcapacitate the school, you basically struggle with low margins for a very long time. So at this stage, I think the two of them are actually in a good space. Hopefully they keep the discipline going forward.
Thank you so much, Zwelakhe Mnguni. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Global Fund Managers.